When Metal Gear Solid launched for the PlayStation in 1998, it was an instant hit. So when Konami announced that it would be developing a sequel for the upcoming PlayStation 2, Metal Gear fans were hyped, and they had every reason to be. The promotional material was kick-ass, the previous game was great, and the new hardware meant new potential. When the game released though, it was met with very mixed reactions, with some fans calling it a disappointment. Before I started my playthrough, I really didn't expect to like it either, but by the time the credits rolled, I found myself blown away. I had never played anything quite like it. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a game that's willing to ask hard questions and make the player think. And although philosophy is present in other Metal Gear games, it's never been quite as heavy as it is in Metal Gear Solid 2. It's because of this that instead of doing a conventional review, I thought it would be best to analyze the game and discuss its relevance in today's world. Just be advised that there will be spoilers, and if you haven't played the game, chances are you'll probably have some trouble following this video. Anyways, without further ado, let's take a look. The opening moments of Metal Gear Solid 2 are universally admired by people who both love and hate the game. And that's because it very much represented what people wanted. Solid Snake was back, better than ever, and rendered in gorgeous new graphics. There were improved controls, throwbacks to the original, and great moments overall. Near the end though, the opening takes an unexpected turn as Solid Snake is defeated and declared dead to the rest of the world. The game then picks up 2 years later as the player finds themselves playing as a mysterious man wearing a wetsuit and a scuba mask. When the mask is removed, what we got was a much less masculine and far younger figure named Raiden, who was meant to replace Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2. Now this decision was incredibly divisive, and for many players is the sole reason why they don't like the game. But like everything else Kojima does, it has a reason behind it. The reason is made most obvious near the end of the game when it's revealed that the entire Big Shell chapter was actually meant to be a simulation of the Shadow Moses incident, put together by the Shadow government in order to create another Snake without using the cloning process. In other words, the Patriots believe that if you subject a person to the same situations and stimuli as another person, you can manage to, almost in a sense, recreate the person. In real life context, this makes little sense, but when looked at from the perspective of the gamer experiencing Kojima's work, it makes perfect sense. Raiden is supposed to ultimately represent you, the player, when you take control of Solid Snake or any character in a game for that matter. This point is also made earlier on in the game in a less subtle way, when we find out that Raiden played through the events of the Shadow Moses incident in a VR simulation.
Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
Sneaking mission 60, weapons 80, advanced,
VR, huh?
but realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year a few soldiers die in field exercises.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
This is very similar to the way that we, the player, experience these events, in the sense that we weren't literally Solid Snake when we played the first game, but someone experiencing a simulation of Snake's own actions. He's also very similar to the player in the sense that he looks up to Solid Snake and constantly learns from him throughout the course of the game. It's also important to note that the first time Snake meets Raiden, he mistakes him for an average Navy SEAL, and it isn't until later that he finds out that he is the legendary hero Solid Snake. This is very similar to the player's experience with the last Metal Gear Solid, which was packaged in an incredibly mundane case with nothing but the title plastered across the white background, along with the words Tactical Espionage Action. To many people who bought the game during its original release period, the game probably seemed like nothing else but another game on the shelf. But when they popped it into their PlayStation 1, what they got was a completely mind-blowing experience. We also see Kojima deliver this message at the very end of the game, directly to the player, when their name appears on Raiden's dog tags. And it's at this moment where most players have obviously caught on.
Anyone you know?
No, never heard the name before. I'll pick my own name, and my own life. I'll find something worth passing on.
If you played Metal Gear Solid 5, chances are you would have caught on to the fact that the similar message is being expressed in that game, but in my opinion, Kojima did a much better job of doing it in Metal Gear Solid 2, mainly because when you go back and play the game, you see the theme constantly reflected throughout the story.
We know we're under attack! We know it! We're breaking the conditioning!
When we live in a democracy, we like to think that we the people have control over who we elect and are mostly aware of the forces at work within our governing bodies. In Metal Gear Solid 2, Kojima explores the popular conspiracy theory that there are people who dwell in positions of power above our government, a shadow government, if you will. In Metal Gear Solid 2, these people are known as the Patriots and have ultimate control over what people are exposed to and who governs them. Throughout the game, the Patriots are revealed to have been behind several events that took place during the previous game, making subsequent playthroughs of previous entries feel a lot different than the first time you played them. Many conspiracy theorists claim a similar effect takes place when they start believing in anything that significantly shifts their paradigm, which makes them see their everyday life and the world around them a lot differently. I think Kojima was going for a similar result so he could give players an incentive to go back and play the old games with fresh new knowledge and more things to look out for. I ultimately think that Kojima intended for the audience to also reflect on how much their choices are influenced by others and question the amount of choice they actually have in their lives. Although most people know memes as these, the term actually originated from Richard Dawkins' famous book, The Selfish Gene. Now, the best way to understand the concept of memes is to think of them like genes, except rather than carrying genetic information, they carry information about culture and ideas. In Metal Gear Solid 2, memes are a central theme in the same way that genes were in its predecessor. A perfect example of this is how Raiden is made up to be a clone of Solid Snake, in the same way that Solid Snake is meant to be a clone of Big Boss. The main difference being, whereas Big Boss was cloned using genetics, his son Snake was cloned through the use of memes. The ending of both of the first two Metal Gear Solid games also involved their protagonists casting aside their memes, or genes.
I only felt truly alive when I was staring death in the face. I don't know. Maybe it's written into my genes.
What about now? What do your genes say about your future now?
Maybe it's time I live for someone else.
Despite being released quite some time before the internet reached its heyday, Metal Gear Solid 2 managed to almost perfectly predict the impact that the age of information would have on political discourse and the culture as a whole, and we see this expressed through the concept of GW and the Patriots AI system. When we first hear about GW from the president, we are told that it's a system established by the Patriots to censor and control information on the internet. Now naturally, the player is supposed to be opposed to this notion, but later on in the game, during a codec call with the AI that controls GW, a very interesting argument is brought up in favor of the new program.
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
And it's precisely because of this moment in the game that I say Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty is so important. If you've been paying any attention to the political scene, which you must have given the incredibly chaotic 2016 election, you would have noticed exactly what the Patriots AI talked about manifesting itself on the internet. We see this through the massive polarization of news media and the echo chambers that have been forming all over the web, causing people to constantly reaffirm their beliefs and in certain cases never hear a different viewpoint. We also see constant attempts to censor the internet and the people in power trying to restore a monopoly over information. It is important to realize though that the people trying to censor the web are in no way perfect and do not have the same objective filter that the Patriots AI has, even though they might claim to. It's because of this that establishing a way to perfectly filter what information becomes relevant would become tainted with the bias of whoever created it. In Metal Gear Solid 2, the Patriots tried to bypass this problem by programming an AI rather than doing it themselves. We can't necessarily expect our leaders to do the same though, which is why it's still important to keep the internet free. Anyways, I hope this video sheds some light on how important this generally overlooked piece of media may be, and I really recommend that anybody concerned about political discourse give it a try, regardless what you believe in. Anyways, if you like this video, remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and give me any suggestions of what you want to see in the future. Anyways, checking out.